Today, I am thrilled to have Felicia Bender on as a guest again. So, Felicia last year was my first guest, and she is now my first repeat guest. I don't know if you know that, Felicia, but I was really
I
excited to
don't
think
know
about that this
that.
morning.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
honored. Actually, I really
Yeah.
am. Thank you.
Yes. I have so enjoyed getting to know you over the last few years and getting to know numerology, getting to know myself better through numerology, and just the whole world that it is. It's something fun that, I look forward to having you on again in the future. And ironically, just yesterday, a client asked me about numerology and wants to talk about it a little bit more with me. And so I'm going to be sending her your way, but I'm also going to be sharing with her because she happens to have the same life path as me. And I was like, ooh, I happen to know a lot about this. So very exciting. So welcome, Felicia. Let me tell people if they haven't heard, didn't watch or hear the prior episode with you, you're an author, you have a PhD, you are a really fun, down to earth, yet so you've got this practical side to you, but you're also very fun and lively, and I just love the combination. But what else do you want them to know about you?
Oh, just basically, I just call myself the practical numerologist, and there's a reason for that. It's exactly what you're saying, and because it's taking this ancient, science and art, and just putting it into okay, now what? How do I use it? Right? How do I use this today in my life? And so that's basically what I love about about numerology and about what drew me to it. So I love to share that with people. So that's why I do what I do.
I love that. And how many? Remind us, how long have you been into numerology?
Oh gosh, it's been well over a decade now. I
Okay.
wrote my first book in 2012, so it's been a while, and I never tire of it. I jokingly say I am so fascinated because I'm just the translator, right? I'm just I'm just the interpreter, and I love meeting people, meeting my clients, and I get to meet them on paper, right? And then with the numbers, and then get to meet them and see how they show up that way. It's just infinitely fascinating, really is.
I love that. So, last episode, and if anybody's interested and you did missed the first time Felicia was on, I will have a link to that episode in the show notes. And so you can go check it out because that will give you a better foundation around numerology, the model of numerology that Felicia follows, because there's a few that are a little bit different from each other. Same general premise across the board, but there's some tweaks to different modalities of that. And then it also talks about how, like, what my life path number is. What does that even mean? And then different things about personal years. And we went over some key personal years in my life recently and last year, especially. So if you want a little more in depth, that one will give you more overview. Felicia can share with us maybe just a few key things right now, but the what we're going to talk about a little bit today is that we've entered into 2023, which is a 7 universal year. And she can help explain what the heck that means because that's affecting all of us. And like I said in the prior one, if this seems a little woo woo, like, bear with me because go listen to that episode and listen to this one too, because honestly, I always say this with this and a few other things that I follow, you just can't make this stuff up. It's too hard to make up how uncanny it is, how serendipitous it is once you start looking at it. And so that 7 universal year, and then for me in the 9-year cycles, I'm in a 5-year. I was in a 4 last year. So what the heck does that even mean? And I can tell you, I'm definitely feel the switch. I felt the 4 wrap up, and I honestly, it was a great fun year, but I'm like, phew, okay, let's take a breather because it was intense. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So Felicia can give us a little insight
Mhm.
to help explain some of what I just touched on, because if you're new to all this, you just heard a whole bunch of weird numbers thrown at you that you're probably wondering what the heck does all that mean. So I don't know, Felicia, what's the kind of the short story on anything you think is important there?
Well, the short story is, well, let's just build it out. All right. So I think it's really good to start at the beginning here and very briefly say that numerology is the art and science of numbers, and it's basically based on the idea that numbers carry with them a frequency and a vibration, and it carries with it information, data, right? And we can think about it in terms of, just everything on our with computers is ones and zeros, right? Our telephone number, and we dial a number and it gets us to a specific other device, right? I mean, it's a little bit weird to think about it. We take it for granted, right? That this happens, and we're like, that's a little wacky, actually. So anyway, it's that whole concept that numbers do have this code also that they offer. And so basically, be that as it may, it's this art and science of looking at each number, what basic defining qualities it brings with it, right? The numbers 1 through 9. We can start applying that whenever it shows up. When we know through numerology what influences and what information each of those numbers carries with it. All right. So in this case, what we're looking at is how to look at each of us individually and see what our numerology might be, each of us individually as a person, right? Because we can look at other things in life numerologically, but what I'm most interested in, honestly, is how this can help each and every one of us locate really purpose in our life. Because if you read anything, look at anything about anyone who talks about success, talks about anything in life, about feeling like we're on task and that we have any kind of efficacy in life, it really all falls into, do we feel purposeful? Do we feel like we understand what our purpose is for being here on this planet at this time? So not to be too, I don't know, woo woo about it, but it really does help you locate your purpose in life, how you're going to go about doing that. It really defines cycles of time, what's going on with you, and what you're learning during these periods of time. So with that said, we can then back up and look at, again, as we change into 2023, as we change years, we're always looking at, wow, this feels different, right? I mean, it has a different feeling to it. I always am looking at it and saying the greatest thing about this stuff is that it can offer you a real framework, and offer you really what is actually energetically there supporting you, guiding you. And when we know that, we can use that energy to make our lives really great, and to have meaning around other things that happen, and not let the energy use us, so to speak. So if we look at what you were first referencing, the universal year, right? So this is basically in numerology a very basic concept that each year it has a resonance, a frequency, and a thematic, right? That all of us globally, as a global community, are experiencing. And that's called a universal year. And that's a very easy calculation. We take 2023 and we add it together like one little teeny math problem, right? 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 3, that equals 7. And so all of us globally, what I like to emphasize here is that it's kind of the umbrella energy that we're all immersed in. We can look at it more like what's going on politically, right? What's going on in terms of our international relationships? What's the key features that all of us globally are working with and through and on? And this will give you an idea of what that is going to be pinpointed on for this particular year. And the 7 is a very spiritually activated number in numerology. So even you have to think about 7, people think about seventh heaven, it's just a very It's a very spiritual vibe. It's also very analytical. So when it shows up as a cycle of time, it really is a pausing period. It's an introspective period. It's a time for delving deeper into the shadows, into the crevices, going deep. It's kind of peeling the onion, right? And it's not a time for action. It's not a time for a huge financial focus. What it is focused on is developing the right state of mind around things. It's about organizing. It's about researching. It's about probing and asking the questions and really wanting to dig into the depth of the answer. So it's not a surface level time at all. So I would say globally, it's kind of just a little bit more low energy. It's introspective. It feels like we need to stop for a moment, not be reactive. Just say, maybe I could do a little more research on that. Maybe I could check my sources. Maybe I could bring this together and digest it. Come up right. It's not about being that reactive sort of energy. It's more about how can I dig deeper and be more, have a more, come from a place of wisdom rather than not. And so it can bring up some really deep kind of shadowy issues collectively and globally that we get to put on the table to be worked with. But it's a beautiful opportunity to grow collectively and evolve spiritually in many ways. And I would also say it's a great time for innovative scientific kind of science meets spirit in many ways. And I would think that this year there's going to be a lot of research, a lot of testing, a lot of things with new ideas, new things that are that we're being pushed to work with collectively, in whatever way, whether it's new different kinds of financial models and systems, whether it's weather related things that we're going to be working on. All the things that we're all talking about right now, right, are going to be key features. But I would think they're not going to be really out there in front of us and launched until next year. It's going to be more behind the scenes this year in that way. So does that make sense overall for the universal energy?
Yeah, I think so. And
Okay.
and I think it lines up with other things I've heard from different other types of people in different spaces, astrological spaces and other it's very much in alignment with what I'm hearing a lot of people when they follow any kind of cycles. And this year, yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think that, like when you first started describing it, and I found myself when you said to slow down, to stop, and I took a deep breath, I think it is time to take a deep breath. It feels like it's just the right time for everybody to take a deep breath after, so to speak, if I just summarize it in a thought, after the last few years, because there was just a lot that we all went through, and it's kind of getting into a new groove now, but we don't know what that new groove is. And a lot of changes still. And I feel that. And I think when you said it feels new, different, it's not just the new year always has that new year vibe, because there's kind of that collective, everybody kind of just there's this collective energy of like new, it's a marker. There is a little different. And I've seen a lot with people I've been following, people who are mentors and experts in their fields like you are, as well as just everyday people who don't follow any of this stuff. But the vibe right now is very much, it hasn't quite been the go get them in the new year thing. And apparently we're going to see a little bit more. It'll pick up in a few weeks and we'll have a little more of that kind of energy. But with what's going on in the astrology and the numbers and everything, it's had kind of a, I don't want to say slow start as if that's bad, but a slow start as if like slow is not always
start
bad.
and
Slow can be
it's
good.
good. Yeah.
Finally to kind of
Yeah.
ease into something.
I mean, even just Mercury. Yeah. Even just
Yeah.
Mercury
Oh, yeah.
retrograde being starting us out. Yeah. So
Yeah. And I've been needing to sleep a lot, I've noticed. And I just am like, okay, it's okay. Go for it. I just did an episode on that recently too, or I guess by the time this drops, it'll be have been a few weeks back, but it's very much in that vibe. Okay, super.
absolutely. And I want to piggyback on that because I have felt that way myself, and other people that I know are saying exactly the same thing. So it's about the sleep, just needing more rest, more restoration, right?
Hmm.
Restorative sleep. And so if we look at that though, numerologically, so that's all out there, that's our collective energy. And yet, what's going to be affecting us numerologically much more intimately and individually is called our personal year. So our personal year is taken from the month of your birth and then the day of your birth. And then rather than your year, we kind of put that to the side and we'll use the current year if we're looking for the personal year for the current year. Okay. And if we use yours as an example, it's September, which is a 9, the 7th, which is a 7. You're born on the 7th, so you make it easy. So in that way, and then 2023, which is a 7. So 9 plus 7 plus 7. And that's 9 plus 7, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And in numerology, we're always reducing to a 1-digit number by and large. And so 2 plus 3 equals 5. So you are experiencing a 5, as you know. I would also say that remind you that last year was not just a 4 personal year for you. It was a master number 22-4. So no wonder why you're sleeping right now.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah, I did
So
a podcast episode and a blog post review of my year, and I was like, "Holy crap." I did a lot. A lot happened. Um, a lot happened.
Mhm.
A lot happened, and it was all
Yeah.
very much in alignment with what that 22-4 uh uh um a lot of work, a lot of systems, a lot of structures, a lot of foundations, a lot of figuring things out in new ways, and a lot of effort. And it was and then the 22 aspect, as I'll describe it, I guess, is as I understand it and felt it, is the having a greater good spiritual focus on what I was doing, having relationships and things coming up. This deeper, bigger, um, just this intensity to it that made it a
Mhm.
little extra complex. And within all of that, needing to balance myself and practice what I preach, because it was definitely a year of a prior version of me would have taken that to the extreme and been sleeping right now out of
Mm.
burnout, or be ill, actually, probably, sleeping and
You'd be in the
ill in
hospital
some
right
way.
about
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
Mm.
serious stuff, and that did not happen. I had a few instances of some back spasms, a few things that cropped up that were just reminders to me of, "Hey, you're teetering on the line, watch it." The old
Mm.
workaholic tendencies, they're right there, just right across that line. You're just tiptoeing a little bit here and there. But overall, I look at the year and I'm like, "Oh, I did pretty well juggling that and not letting
Mm.
it get the best of me and hurt me." And that was the difference, where I was able to use the energy for good for myself and forward momentum and take advantage of it without it taking advantage of me. And that was a tricky one for
And
me to
that
do.
and that's
Yeah.
a major achievement in the
Yes.
in the achievement oriented 4. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
there we go. But an achievement in a different way. And so, for those of you listening, just some little takeaways or pinpoints here If you're in a 4 personal year, it is a more serious year. It's about where you're being asked to structure things, to systematize things. And to me, it's if you visualize a box, because the 4 is, if you even look at the number 4 and you turn it upside down, it kind of looks like a box. It's or a chair, something sturdy, right? It is foundations energy. It's the number of hard work, stability, process, all of those very, real world, making it happen, slow and steady wins the race sorts of energies. It's also the number of limitations. So there's going to be plenty of limitations that come in to meet and greet you in a 4 year. And it's also the number of health. And I always like to emphasize it's not the number of bad health at all, because everyone's like, it's like, no, it's not the number of bad health. It's the number of health. Why? Why is the 4? Basically, I would say because when you experience the energy of a 4, you're doing just what you were just describing, is you're working too much. You think you take on all the projects, everything's important. You have to get it in line and make sure that you've got this punch list every day that just you keep marking things off, and you keep thinking, oh, I'll take a break when my punch list is done, and it's never done. It just keeps growing during a 4 year. So it really is a matter of, it's an endurance race, and it's asking you to take care of your health, to pay attention to your health, because in a 4 cycle, usually you'll put that on the back burner, right? You'll go, oh, I'll go get that massage after blah, 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 blah. And the after blah, 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 blah never happens, right? Or I'll take that 3-day weekend, or I'll take the night off. I'll turn my phone off, or, whatever it is that you allow yourself time and space to recharge, to regroup, to relax. I mean, really, it sounds kind of corny, but to find a way to actually relax, not think about relaxing, right? Different story, but relax. And then if you've got the double 2 going on, again, it's a spirit. It's a year of really building something. It's the material path, or kind of, let me put it this way. It's the spiritual pathway to material gain or material manifestation in some way. So it's building something that you feel is going to be of service, right, to the greater good in some way, shape, or form. And again, the Master 22 is kind of hard to modulate, because there's a lot of emotional stuff going on there. And then there's also some self-doubt. There's also some micromanagement, all of the things that can go into be an obstacle to making that happen. And yet it is a super powerful year. And when you're doing it, you're setting yourself up to have this stuff locked down so that you can enter into your 5 with the solid surface to fly, right? To have more levels of freedom. So explain how that might be showing up for you as you're bridging into this 5. And then we can talk about the 5 a little bit.
So, for people that have been following me, or even if they're a little bit newer to me, that last year was developing this whole online business around around coaching, and developing an online program that takes all of my core skill sets and trainings and various things over the last years together, and bringing out what I found that's helped me the most in creating a more balanced life, and naming my program Busy to Balanced. All of that happened last year. Launching my podcast happened last year. And so, and it's not like I was like, oh, I'm learning numerology, because I had been learning more in the last 2-ish years, but it's not like, oh, this is the year that I need to do this. No, this is just what was happening. But when I learned about it, I was like, oh, well, this makes sense. Interesting that this is all happening this year. And 30 weeks of me being in courses as a student myself, learning and doing work every day, being diligent, learning new programs I'd never learned, and figuring stuff out, and hiring people to help me in different ways. And yes, teetering on the, am I micromanaging? What do I need to do? How do I move this forward? Am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? The task list. There were definitely some moments where I was like, what the heck am I doing? There is so much on this list. And we all have long lists. If you're listening to this and you're in my world, you're probably a person with a lot of lists, no matter what year you're in. And yet it was astronomical compared to quote unquote more normal year. And I just took a deep breath and used my skills and reminded myself, I'm doing this for the right reasons. I'm enjoying it. People are benefiting. Look at the feedback and just use your skills to counter the part of your brain that's trying to freak out right now, because this is just a moment of a feeling. You can move through it. So that's what I did. And I got to practice that regularly, and then being vulnerable and sharing all sorts of things about myself. So then here I am, all these systems in place. I learned 33 new pieces of software I figured out last year. I couldn't
Oh my
believe that, with
God.
I know. And it sounds crazy, but it's
Ugh.
true. When I looked at it, but you have an online business, there's a lot of moving parts. And
Yeah.
some of them you try and then you switch, but I mean, there's more than that that's active right now, and it's still astonishing to me. But anyway, here all that is
Mhm.
set up, and now I'm in a very different place, and I'm refining and I'm tweaking and I'm looking at what works and what doesn't. I tried a lot of things and I'm figuring out what suits me, what doesn't, just because some people I like and follow and admire are doing XYZ, maybe it doesn't work for me. I'm going to try this. It's just a tweak. It's a this, but it doesn't feel like the whole new develop something from the ground up that I had last year. It's so different right now. So that's my lead in. That's where I am at
Mhm.
right now for sure. And a very much into my body more, and the sleep, like I said, just and my energy, just more aware. I feel like just more heightened. Like a few days ago, had some anxious
Mhm.
moments, and I just was like, I think this is a day. Oh, and speaking of cycles, menstrual cycle coming up, and I've noticed in a certain age that I'm at with what I'm facing with my changes in my body, that this time I do tend to have at least one day of extreme anxiety, and it is pretty much clockwork, and I'm paying attention to that. Um,
Mhm.
and so but I'm more in tune with it now. I can check in with it. My body, I'm paying more attention, and then I can call it out for what it is. And I'll be like, use your skills, adjust what you're doing today, work this out, take care of yourself. And tomorrow this tomorrow will be better because you've been paying more attention and you can
Mhm.
feel it more in your body. And I know the 5 is more about that, about kind of being in your body more. And for me, being up in my head and kind of in the ethers a lot with thoughts and things of my life path number 11-2, being more grounded in my body and being able to sense and feel and work with these things and embrace them, I think is part of me really stepping into that 5 from some of the things I've learned from you. Is that about right?
Absolutely.
Is
And
that
what I
some of it?
love also, yeah. Well, what I love also to point out is that at this point in your 5, you should have no clue what's in store for you at all. I mean, you've set the groundwork. You're doing your diligence and everything else, and yet the 5, if we look at it with numerology, the personal years are 9-year cycles, and we go through that throughout our lives. We just keep 9 to 1, 9 to 1, and you're in a 5. So what does that mean? That means you're in the very midpoint. It's kind of like we have a week, and it's kind of like Wednesday. It's kind of like hump day, right? It's like in that sort of way. So it's midpoint, and it is kind of like hump day in terms of you're like, oh, okay, what something's gonna change, right? This is a year of change. It's a year of opportunity. It's a year where everything you've put into place, then you're going to start to magnetize new people, new experiences, new opportunities, new things that that I would love to have a conversation at the end of the year for you to go, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that, in January, I thought it was all clear. And now look what I'm doing, where I am, what's going on, right? Most of the time, people, when you're in it, when you're in the flow of the 5, it's like the world is your oyster, right? And it's a time, it's on that realm, really a time of exploration. But it's also a time where you feel like all the bright and shiny objects are coming in. And so you have to really work on not being distracted. You have to work on focus. You have to work on not being scattered, right? And kind of, really just jumping on something and then abandoning it, or jumping on something and hanging on really long, even though you know that it really, you're like, no, that's not like what you were talking about, all these programs that you're looking at. And, you're like, that doesn't really connect with who I am and what I'm doing right now, right? In some ways. So it's evaluating that as you go. On the personal level, it is super sexy, super sensual, and a time where you can really, really enjoy all of those things, whether it's nice meals, whether it's, anything just having to do with the 5 senses is really favored during a 5-year. And then I always like to say, well, then, oh, that sounds great. What could possibly go wrong? Right? Yeah. This all sounds perfect. Oh, and I forgot kind of the biggest thing for the 5 before I get into what could possibly go wrong. And it's a good year for travel, adventurous pursuits, that sort of thing. So give yourself the golden ticket for that. Anything, always say yes to that. So with that said, though, it will bring up some fear. Any of those underlying fears that might be lingering around can come in, and it can bring up excesses in whether it's excessive work or excessive, not work. It depends on where you are with that. So, or anything else with excess. I just use that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the 5 is a catalytic year. It is a year of change, and it is a year to say yes. It is a year to experience, to explore. You want to look back at the end of the year and go, wow, what experiences I had, during that year. So that's basically a 5. So we get to see how that's going to unfold for you as you move through the year.
A couple things came up. So, if we just look back, I know that the last quarter of a year, and now I understand this more. I always felt this intense energy shift for myself before I knew about numerology that last quarter. And part of that, I think, is because there is kind of a transition that starts happening, plus my birthday being in September. There's also that kind of switch that something kind of adjusts to, which we could get in a whole conversation about. But I know we've talked about that before, and it can be kind of something energetically there. And so now I understand it, because there always was kind of a shift that I felt pretty intense around my birthday or October, the month after, kind of toward year end. And now I understand it more. But here's an interesting example. So one of my mentors had told me, you should really pitch yourself to be on some podcasts, other podcasts. And it was around October. But something was making me, it didn't feel right. And I needed to pick and choose where I was spending my time so that I didn't go overboard on too many things last year. So I was like, yes. And so I started doing research and figuring out some places to pitch myself that I felt were good fits. But I did not actually send out any pitches until the last week of the year, or maybe technically, I think I may have even been in January, to be honest. I think I even maybe just did this a weekend. I think it was after January 1st. So I didn't plan that. I was thinking, oh, in December I would do that. But then if I look back, it didn't happen till January. So here I am seeking opportunities. And I also, was going for some lower hanging fruit that was advised to me like, hey, look at these lists, go for these type of numbers and the rankings and to reach out. It'll be easier to get them to notice you and whatever. And then my dad was asked me when I told him that, he says, when have you ever not, he says, who do you normally go, like in my prior business? He said, he says, you tell me, who do you normally go meet? Like as far as company, the people in it. And I said, I often will go straight up to the CEO. And I said, but that was in person. That was just the way it was when I was in trade show world.
Mhm.
But he said, why is this any different? And I realized he was right. It doesn't mean that I can go after, I mean, why not throw some in? So I was really, it was interesting because by the time I got to do this and felt the vibe one day to do it, the first one I sent out was to a big name, a big, big, big one. I've not heard back. Who knows if I will, but it felt so good. And then I sent out a couple more, and then now I have more to send out. And so that to me feels like in this energy, that feels like going for the
Mhm.
opportunities, seeking adventure and going for it. So and saying yes and saying to the universe too, like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Why not go for this one? So,
Mhm.
or any of these that I think would be cool and I could add some value. So that happened, and that's interesting timing. And then travel, I am feeling like I'm going to be going, by the time this airs, I may have already gone skiing for the first time this season, which I'm going to do by myself because I have a plan to go with some girlfriends too. So we're going to do that this season. And we haven't skied together in years, probably 10 years. And so that is happening. But I'm also have plans. I found a ski bus that I want that's local and easy enough for me to get to, that I just feel drawn to go do this by myself. And that's an
Mhm.
adventure thing. That's a travel thing. Um, my husband doesn't have much desire to ski anymore, and I do. I'm also very comfortable doing things solo and being kind of just in my own vibe out in nature. And I'm excited about that. I'm going to do that a few times this season, and I want to do more next year, which will be the end of my 5 year too. Some plan ahead. I have
Mhm.
a desire to go. I'm starting to feel that itch. It's just really interesting, and I'm getting things, just throwing these little thoughts out there, or starting to plan with friends, or and then the flip side of it, you talked about fear and the well, the five senses. I thought, well, perfect practice. One of my trainings is in positive intelligence, which is very much about tuning into any one of your senses at any moment to help overcome your fears. And my certification as a
Mm.
coach is certified fearless living coach and a certified fearless trainer. So I know a lot about overcoming fears, working with fear and not letting it get to you. So to keep you from living your best life. So I thought, okay, perfect year for me to practice all my good stuff and then go for these things and then see what it brings. So it's just interesting to bring it all together with like me personally.
Well, and what I love is that you're going to be given the opportunity to actually bring the what could be this, in theory, I'm going to coach you on fearless living. And now you can actually step back and go, oh, I got to put my tools into practice. And here is how, and to really have a refresher on how to actually, really truly, how do these tools work in real life, right, in the real
Yep.
world. And I think that that's going to be super valuable for what you're doing and why you're doing it this year as well.
Yeah.
It's really going to be an additive. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I set everything up last year too, is that the way I teach the things I put out there, a lot of this podcast is sharing my personal experience and hoping that it comes across and hoping that I bring the threads in to have it be relatable and that people can understand and tie it into their own lives. Because that's the end game, of course. But the best way I can share is through my own experience, especially for my topics and everything. So it'll continue to give me that opportunity, and that's great. So I'm excited about that. And facing my fears, actually, interestingly enough, I was able to there was a fear thing that came up just this last week. So it hit in January that my and by the time this airs, he'll be home and everything is fine. But my father was admitted to the hospital for a week, and he had an infection that kind of snuck up, and they didn't realize was going on. All is fine and under control, but it did bring up some fears. It did bring up memories of about 4 or 5 years ago when a similar type of infection ended up leading him to be in the hospital for almost 6 months. And it did bring up fears of parents, are aging and not going to be here forever and all the stuff. It did bring it up. And I had an opportunity to kind of get back in my body, ground myself, and be like, this is like, what are the facts? What's going on? What's the reality? He's okay. Talk to him. My brother works at the hospital he's at, so I got to talk to him. But not go into the old way. So I had the opportunity to practice all of that, and it was definitely a moment, though, of it could have spun me out. It could have spun me out for a bit. Yep. So, but it didn't.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
I knew how to work with it to
How
make
to
sure it didn't.
circumvent.
Yes. Yeah. But it's interesting. I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about the timing of a couple of these things that are very much, again, it's just hard to make this stuff up.
Yeah, yeah. And I just love it as, again, it's a framework, and it shows up differently for all of us within those same themes, because your 5 personal year this in 2023 is going to be different than it was 9 years ago, and it's going to be different than it'll be 9 years from now, right? There'll be different things that you're working on. There'll be different elements of your life. There'll be different levels of maturity and experience. So it's always worth mentioning, because I think a lot of people are like, well, I mean, it can't be the same for everyone. It's like, okay, it's information to use. If it resonates and if it offers you a framework. I just have to say that, in my personal life, I have just found it invaluable to make meaning. I think when you begin to practice these modalities, whether it's astrology, whether it's numerology, whether it's whatever it is that you are studying or really passionate about, it actually allows you to just live a much more mindful, intentional life overall. And for me, that is what draws me to this. And it really has provided that for me personally. And I think, again, I'm all for whatever speaks to you, right? Whatever works for you. I just love the numerology, because for me, the numbers never lie, and you can look it up. You don't have to be meditating on a candle for, I don't know, for hours before you get the eureka moment or whatever. I'm using that as a silly, probably ineffective example, but you know what I mean. You don't have to ohm in a corner and hope for some kind of miraculous, psychic download to understand how to really understand your purpose in life, and to understand what you're working with from year to year on a most basic level. I think it's really powerful to be able to know that.
On top of all that, I love also following, if you get on Felicia's list and get into her world, she does a monthly forecast that is tied to your personal year, and then what that month brings, because of course there's more numbers, because there are. So each month has a number. And for me, since it's a 5 year and we're in January, which is a 1, January being the first month of the year, and plus my 5 equals 6. And so this January is a 6 for me, which interestingly enough also can be connected to family stuff, right? And relationships and things. So we just talked about dad and, being connected with him and my brother, and a lot more calls than than I've had in a long time with them, and a lot of connection, as an example. But she does this great monthly forecast, and I listened to the beginning of the month, but what's so interesting is if you go back to it toward the end of the month or at the end of the month, which I've done often, the amount of stuff that fits is uncanny. And I just, and if you're thinking, oh, well, maybe that happens because you listen to it and you let that guide you. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's that simple to listen to 10 minutes and
Mm.
have it literally shape how I react to things and the choices I make. I think that you are wonderful and powerful and
Well, and
magnificent,
what
Felicia, but
experiences
you
come
don't have
in.
that kind of control over people, So I think people should give it a chance.
Thank you for, yes, yes. Thank you for noticing
Yeah.
that, because it is funny. I don't want, that's almost, that's very distasteful to even think about that. But I have a lot of people who say exactly the same thing. They're like, I love listening to your forecast or reading them at the end of the month to see how it played out, and just put some meaning around it. So it's really, I always say jokingly, but not jokingly, if you cannot get out of bed in the morning without reading your horoscope and without consulting your daily number or whatever, let alone for a little while, live
Yes.
your life,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yes.
go. So it's not meant to be an excuse, a crutch, an obsession, in that kind of way. It's meant to be a tool. It's meant to be something that inspires and empowers you. As soon as it turns into something negative, that's when I'm like, no, 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 this is not in any way meant to be. A lot of people, especially with numerology, oh, is this bad luck? Is it, those sorts of things? And I just, I don't believe in that. I just believe that this is here to support us and to inspire us and to show us the most, the bright and shiny of each of the numbers, and then the challenges, because that's what life is, right? It's being met with challenges, basically, is what life is all about.
Yep. And I love how you
Sometimes we
also
forget that.
I love how you also phrase things as it's like knowing the theme to your party. All of this stuff in a sense, it helps set the framework for you. And if I look back at the years or the months where I didn't quite go with the flow, feel into the theme, have it work with me instead of me trying to work against it, it was more challenging time. And so going with the flow and knowing what this framework is for you specifically with your own personality, numbers, all of your stuff, for me to know that about myself, how it all fits together, it just helps me. And so, yes, if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, just like anything in life. But I really highly encourage everyone listening to check it out. And so, Felicia, share with us, best way to find you. And like I mentioned, I'll have a link to the prior episode we did together in the show notes. I'll also have a link to connect with you. And there's something that you've got going on right now that you can tell them about. And then we can have them go check you out. Again, I highly recommend you follow Felicia and get on her list. She's now doing all her forecasts on YouTube as well, so you can subscribe there because it's so. I really look forward to it. I literally pay attention and notice the end of the month, and I'm like, ooh, either the. Yeah, I'm waiting for the. I'm waiting. It's time for the forecast to come from Felicia, and I get so excited to go listen to that while I make my coffee or tea and breakfast in the morning,
Yeah.
and that's like a treat at the beginning of every month. So that I just want to really encourage you guys to do. So Felicia, what do you got going on right now?
Um, well, the portal for all things, for all the numerology curious people out there, would be FeliciaBender.com. Pretty simple, and it really is. I've created it as what I hope to be as a really nice resource for people. You can find out about your life path number there. There's a life path calculator, personal year calculator, that sort of thing. A lot of articles. You can get a chart there. All of those things that you can just find out more. Right now, I'm offering a Numerology for Entrepreneurs course, and I do have rolling enrollment for a certification course as well. If you're really numerology curious, and often I find that I get people who would like to have certification who are like you, like who are coaches, maybe astrologers, anything of that nature to add to their toolbox. I also get people who would like to be professional numerologists and just up their game in that way. And so it's a certification through my institute, through with my mode of doing numerology, because there's no numerology university overall, but you can gain a certification level through my school or my institute of numerology. So all of that is available at FeliciaBender.com.
Super. And the Numerology for Entrepreneurs is a tight deadline here, so do jump on that. The doors are open now when this episode is dropping, and will be closing soon. So if that's intriguing to you, don't hesitate to go check it out and get yourself signed up. Well, as always, Felicia, I love seeing you. I love chatting with you about this stuff, and I love hearing what you've got going on and how you're out there helping people like me, move along in this world with just a little more ease. And I'm very grateful to you, and having you in my ear every month is such a treat. And I know that we always like to close with a quote, and Felicia has one in mind. I think she's going to share now, and it may have been. We talked about this before.
Well, it's so funny because we talked about that. I'm like, oh, we might skip this one this time because I've got a lot of quotes floating around in my head, but none that are just like right there at the tip of my tongue. And I have a kind of funny sense of humor, and so does my daughter. And this is what my daughter and I kind of our little private joke. So I find it more maybe funnier and than other people might find it. But I love this quote because it is funny and also so poignant, which is, well, 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 if it isn't the consequences of my own actions. So I think that is a really good one to think about in terms of, I think it's very empowering, and also just allows a really wonderful perspective of those of us who, because we all know the people who would love to point the finger at everybody else, and say, this happened to me and I'm this and that. And I think often it's really great to go, you know what, we create our own reality. We create by our own actions and by all of that, where we are. And that's not punitive. It's actually just the way things operate. And the sooner that we can figure that out, the better off we are. So I'm always looking at the consequences of my own actions. So,
as I think we all should be doing. Absolutely. Felicia was wondering if that was a quote she shared last time. And I said, I don't know. And you know what? It doesn't matter. I think it bears repeating. It is a fabulous quote, and it bears repeating. And I think it's a great reminder. And it ties into all of this too, because, it doesn't matter what any of the stuff that you follow at the end of the day, whether it's some kind of religion or spiritual practice or beliefs or frameworks or whatever. At the end of the day, your life is a result of your actions and what you do. So, and those a result are of your beliefs. I mean, all of that contributes. So that's why getting some healthy, supportive stuff in there along the way, including in my opinion, numerology, can help you then make actions that are more in alignment, shall we say, with what's for your best.
Absolutely. That is the point. That is the point. Yes.
Okay. Well, bye for now, Felicia, and we'll have you back later this year, like you said, to check out and see how my 5-year ended up going.
Okay. I can't wait. Enjoy it all. Okay.
Okay.